you for having me,
Marcus
man.
says, I'm not going to go through, please Google him. He's won more awards than me, which is rather annoying because I'm like 20 years older, but that's okay. And he's better looking and he's run a marathon. But besides that, we're exact equals.
Exactly.
Exactly the same. Brother from another mother is what we
Yeah.
always say.
Yeah.
But Marcus, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
The C100 is, as you know, it's really the way I define it is how we can bridge China and America together diplomatically, peacefully, smartly, and it's really, to be blunt, my parents were more proud when I became a C100 member than probably getting into college, getting married, and having children. They were like, "Oh, C100, you made it, son."
What else is there?
Yeah, there's not. We're gonna try to get you in.
Yeah.
But Marcus, we've been charged with talking about the current state of the restaurant industry, but I want to talk about the positives and if there are positives. But obviously, there's been a lot of negatives. We've been so affected. Just how have you been, and how has New York City been, and how are your restaurants? And by the way, for the record, Marcus, like a lot of us, just we give back all the time. And please, Marcus, talk about your role with World Central Kitchen and how many thousands of people you've fed.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Ming, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your community. You've been a great friend and ally, and we cooked all over the world together. And hopefully one day we can continue to do that, because that's what we do best. We're in the happy business, and not to be able to connect with your friends, customers, cooks, it's very strange. So every chef, we are who we are through our communities.
Yeah.
So March 15, I'm actually going to go back to South Beach Food and Wine.
Okay.
This year, I was supposed to get honored. I got honored that Saturday night, but for that lunch, my friend Sarah said, you need to go and see Jose. He's doing something with World Central Kitchen. You have to be there. And you know Jose Andres. So very passionate. I walk into the room and he said, World Central Kitchen, it's your organization. You have to take it by the horn. It's yours. And, I kind of like, great. And in the back of my mind, I'm going to think about what he meant, because I live in Harlem. At some point, we're going to need him. I didn't know for what, but we're going to need him. 10 days later, when the world, and sort of when the world changes, COVID is real in America, Jose was my first phone call. And I said to him, remember that presentation you did in Miami? We need you now. And at that point, Ming, we're talking first week of March.
Right.
No one had gloves. No one had masks.
Right.
And I said, I got to shut down my restaurant. I'm okay to be a community kitchen and serve for the neediest in our community, but you got to help me do it. What's the guideline? I didn't even know what social distancing was at that point. And he said, we'll be there in 3 days. And ever since that, so basically back up to March 15, since March 15, Red Rooster have served alone 1,000 people a day on average, sometimes 1,500, sometimes 600, together with World Central Kitchen. So we've served now collectively here in Harlem about 250,000 meals.
Wow.
And in Newark, because we collected 20 restaurants to do it, we, together with World Central Kitchen and Newark Working Kitchen, it's been 300,000 meals. And these numbers are so big, but it's also saved our restaurants, because we were able to hire back, not all our staff, but some staff, but also the infrastructure of food, Ming, which is completely interrupted at this point, right? So yeah, we've been a community kitchen. It's been very gratifying, but it's also been very difficult.
Yeah, I hear you. I did similar, as I did the Lee Initiative with Chef Ed Lee, and he did similar. He set up 20 cities, same thing, fed thousands of people. And obviously it's so great to give back to people in need, but it's just as heartwarming, if not even more, to save our family, right? Our restaurant family. Because as we know, in our business, there's 30, 40, 50% that are under the radar. they're never getting an unemployment check. They're never getting a bailout. So their last check from us was their last check. They usually send money home. But one, now they can't even go home. And two, literally, it's not like 9/11, which was a horrific incident in our history. But you could move to Michigan and get a job as a chef, right? Because you could leave New York. You can't leave the United States of America if you're American, right? Actually, we can't even leave. No country's going to allow us. Maybe Sweden will allow us first, Marcus. So the biggest challenge for both of us, I know, is to how do we get our family, our staff back, but how do we sustain? Because right now, it's almost a Cinderella period because it's nice out. So you have a great patio, right, at Red Rooster. I unfortunately don't have a patio dragon, so we are still closed. But a lot of restaurants are doing good. I mean, like Grand Acres did aviary on top of a rooftop, and so people are very clever. And how do we sustain and keep it open? But what's your honest opinion and feeling when it starts to rain and get cold? How is it going to just, I don't know, completely affect our industry, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I have to speak about it from two different, being a chef. I mean, you think about the word restaurant, it means to restore your community. And chefs, we almost more like tribal chiefs in a way, right? The way you think about a tribe in Africa, for example, the tribe leader, you have to be there for the good and the bad. And that's essentially what we are as chefs, right? We are the first responders. We are happy. I mean, I know what you came to New York during 9/11 just to help out. I remember that. You went to Bahamas last year to help Jose out. The amount of charity that you've done enough charity for your kids and I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, this is reality.
You as well, sir. But
no, we all have, but that's how we think, right?
Yeah.
And then you and I are also extremely fortunate because as celebrity chefs, we have many outlets. The restaurants are our family and who we are, but we can also do other things. And I think that in this time, being a person of color, if you can navigate, it can be a huge advantage. I'm an immigrant to this country. Your parents, your grandparents are immigrants. Many people that are going to watch this are immigrants, first or second generation.
Yep.
So I drew it back to that. Ming. I remember coming here with a big dream and vision and $300 in my pocket. All I wanted to do was to add value. This moment is almost like that. So what did we do after I started my podcast? In the basement with my buddy called This Moment with another friend of mine. And
that's great.
Just started to share, this is what we're going through, right? And I finished my book, The Rise, which really focused on African-American chefs in this moment. So rather than sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, when we're healthy and we have the platforms that you have and you don't have it, you earned it and worked for it for a very, 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 very long time. So it's our job to fill that with solutions and opportunities.
I so agree, because you can only stick your head in the sand for a week, right? Yeah. Then after that, you're like, okay, well, I got mouths to feed and I need to sustain. And the word of the year is pivot, right? Yeah. Be flexible. It's Taoism, right? You have to roll with the water. You can't fight this turbulent water. There's no way you can fight this. It's here, and it's here for, Fauci says another year with COVID. So as restaurateurs, we're like, another year? How, right now it's like, how do you get through winter, right? How are we going to, and I know you do a lot of to-go, but eventually, unfortunately, people did a lot of to-go in the beginning, but to-go is expensive, right? It's much more expensive than cooking at home. So they can't be buying from you and me for 3 nights a week for the next year. It's just not, it's not even sustainable. So how do you think you're going to get through this winter? I know you have, thank God, you have your new book, you yourself, but your restaurants, how do you have a contingency plan that, okay, we might just have to close for 3 months because no one's coming in? And is that, are you already talking to landlords and talking to banks and say, look, this is this is going to happen, guys. I did a survey, and out of 100 of my friends, 90 aren't going to come in eat indoors. So that tells me we have a problem here. Are you trying to even set that up and just kind of forethought with your landlords, or?
I think, Ming, that to be honest, it's, if you want to take the economy in the state of restaurant at, call it January 20th this year.
Right.
We're not back to that economy and that drive until 2024. It's a cycle, because think about it, right? Who comes to my restaurant? Who comes to your restaurant? There's a part of local, then there's a part of conferences.
Yes.
And those conferences are sold out, and they're in Boston, and they love to be there, and it's after work. Well, they're not coming back for a while.
Right.
And then there is that tourist, in my case, from Sweden, from France, and whatever, right? Well, they're coming back, but they're not coming back next May, and they're not coming back the following October, right?
Right.
And all of those three are very important buckets in your guest relationships. You need all three. Nothing that your restaurant, whatever Ming Tsai do, is a destination experience. Well, same with me. So, before COVID, we were 180 employees at Red Rooster and 70 musicians. That's a tribe of 250 people, right?
Wow.
I don't have that tribe back ever, or maybe 2024. That doesn't mean we're not going to have a great experience and continue to build and be a great restaurant,
Right.
but it's different. And I have to now say, accept that. And we did $13 million in our restaurant last year.
Right.
If we can do 6 next year, I take it. But that's a huge flux, right?
Yeah, that's a gigantic delta. Yeah, you don't need an abacus to figure that one out. Yeah, but fortunately, you can still survive on that, right? You've set yourself up, and again, you set yourself up because you're a great chef and a great businessman. So it's not a fluke that you can adjust like that. Let me ask you, do you think? I mean, that is so sobering, right? 2024. I mean, that seems like 10 years from now, right? Is there anything that you've seen in the last 6 to 8 months that was actually so positive and so amazing that you never thought it would happen when everyone is just so down and in such need? I mean, besides the charity we're talking about, obviously there's been great, but has there been a story that has been like, you know what, this never would have happened if there wasn't COVID? Is there any light like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the amount of time that I spent with my son is 4, and I'm watching the kid, weekly. There are changes that I would not have caught otherwise, right? Truth is, to build what you built, to build what I built, means that we leave our home on weekly basis to go and conquer. And that's probably been the biggest gift. My block where I live, they shut it down. So every day there could be community and kids experiences, like a pod. So all the other 4 to 6 to 8 year olds all the parents said, we're going to have a great summer. The kids going to have a great summer. Right. And it just ended yesterday. And stuff like that. So, I mean, think about it. New York City, to have a true village experience.
Yeah.
I mean, Harlem has that level of connectivity, and you become almost ultra local in a way. And that happened on my block. So Zion probably had the best summer ever. Right.
Oh my God, you got to see Daddy every day.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
And there were, the kids on the street, and it was different events every day.
So is your wife Maya also ecstatic, or she's like, can you go back to work now, Marcus?
Yeah. No, that's happening. So that's happening.
Yeah, no, I get that too. So one thing that
But I wanted to bring up
please.
something else.
Please.
If you think about, and I I draw from this, right? So I'm not saying everybody should, but go back to your grandparents' time in China, or go back to my grandparents' time in Africa. During horrible times, great food and happiness was still achieved.
Yep.
And our generation, we always feel like everything has to get better. It's just who we are. The Berlin Wall came down. Internet came up in our time. Whatever.
iPhone.
Yeah, iPhone, whatever you want it to be. So this is actually 9/11, and this is our first generational setbacks, where it's kind of like so much larger than ourselves.
Yep.
I think about what Black people experienced during the civil rights movement. You think how many decades of fighting it was to get just to voting. So as collective, we've never said, hey, in 6 years, in 4 years, we can do this. And this is a test of us as a generation, of our patience, of our commitments.
Yeah.
And it's, it's interesting.
Huge test.
Yeah.
And guess what? We can't give up, right?
No.
We're the human race. We can't give up. We can't toss it in. If you toss it in and I toss it in, and we're like I said, wrap it up, then what, right? I so agree with you. In times of need, people do rise, right?
Yeah.
And Jose Andres is just one. Ed Lee is another. I mean, so many people have done amazing things as well. Obviously, hopefully, in the pharma industry, they're going to be doing amazing things as well. Because the good news is, when there is a vaccine, hopefully not from Russia. No offense to the Russians on this call, but I'm not going to take a Russian vaccine anytime soon. Hopefully, I've been told by very many experts, 6 to 8 months, there may be something that's going to be effective and safe. And then, but it takes another at least 6 to 8 months, 10 months to get it to everyone in the country. And I mean, there's lots of hurdles, right? But there is an end game, because we will eventually get a vaccine, right? We will. We just don't know. It's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. And then the new normal is not, we're never going back to normal. Right? Yeah. There's just never going to be what we used to have. There's just, I mean, you said it. Think about every time we've been to Vegas and how packed those places are. That's just not going to happen, right? But we just can't give up, right? There's not.
No, but we learned. I think human race is also amazing to understanding new sets of rules. I mean, think about traveling pre 9/11, post 9/11. As chefs, if I would fly to Boston. Pre 9/11, I could take my knives in my back and just say, hey, I'm a chef. Yeah. And they just let you walk through. And post, I mean, good luck with that. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, this is, anytime you see a crowd, you might be like, not sure. And, we live through experiences. And I just don't want that to stop, because that's really what America is. It's experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And if, Marcus, if I can, because you touched on it, and I really want to I want to hear your view, because not only has COVID been a huge thing for the entire world, but this whole Black Lives Matter movement, right? The horrible murders, right? Breonna Taylor, Floyd, et cetera. You just can't, I don't have time to list them all. And one thing I know for sure is I am not Black, right? So I've taken this stance, and I have learned, right? Because I'm reading the anti-racist book right now. And I've taken this stance that I first need to just listen, because how could I suggest what the Black race should do? I'm not Black. I don't know. So I'm listening. And then I feel, once you listen and you understand, then I call it herd. We call it herd in the kitchen, herd chef. So for those that don't know, in the US kitchens, chef, fire 2 steaks, herd. That's like we chef in France. So herd in our industry is how we use it. But I really feel that, and hopefully everyone on the call, but everyone in this country needs to just not listen, because you can't just be, I'm not racist. That's complicit. You have to be anti-racist. That's my opinion. And you have to listen and then understand and then act. And act is, people are like, well, how do you act? Well, act is support your African-American businesses, grocery stores, restaurants, hire more African-Americans. That's action. I'd love to hear your opinion, because, well, you are Black and I'm not.
Well, I think, thanks for I mean, thanks for acknowledging the challenge, right? But I think you can relate because you go back 100 years ago to this country, the laws that were set up against Chinese Americans were horrible, right?
Yeah.
And every person on this, not every, but most people on this call knows the history 1,000 times better than me, right? That is why Chinatowns were set up, for example. And you can look at it like, even on a newer example, why do we assume that Japanese food should be expensive and Chinese food should be cheap?
Yeah.
If that's not the epitome of racism, you tell me what is, right?
They don't even cook their fish. They don't even cook their fish. How's that possible?
Also, most of Japanese cooking actually stems from China and came from China through the wars up to Japan. So like there is so many wrongs in that, but it just shows me that racism, it's more layered, right? For me, it starts with caste, right?
Yep.
Which is much older than racism, right? So caste, class, race, all of those are combined in one, right? So you can be LeBron James and have the money, but class-wise, he's still from Akron, Ohio, right?
Right.
And only in America can LeBron and the amazing people that we have here cut through that and jump forward. That's the beauty in America. But we have to really look at it from caste, class, race. And it is, racism, class system is an American original sin that, the Nazis came over here to study how white supremacists handle African Americans. That was something that the German Nazis came to study because they felt that America has done it in perfection. I mean, just think about that, how deep tissue that is, right?
Yeah.
And they actually thought it was too cruel and had to figure it out how to fit in Germany. So this is not something that is going to go away, but I do think that people that want to learn, read Nicole Hannah Jones, for example.
Yep.
Read Isabel Wikisam, incredible writers in this space, and put it on your podcast when you go for a run or whatever is your activity or walk. And, you will see how 1619 is connected today. So I'm going to give you an example of last example of this. As an immigrant, Ming, I had a higher chance to get bank loans than as a Black person. So what other nation would allow your own people not to get a bank loan, but someone coming from the outside? Try that in Sweden. Good luck with that. Right? So when we talk about institutional racism, it's not in the act of the N-word. People are like, no, I will never use that word. That actually is quite irrelevant,
Right.
It's what are the most common way for a family to create generational wealth is to buy a house.
Yep.
But when you don't have access to bank loan and you were rooted out of a community and you didn't have access to buy that house, right? That creates generational injustices that goes on and on and on and on. And let's say you bought a house in 1940 for $5,000 that today is worth, $500,000, but you never were able to get in.
Right.
So it's not in this nonsense whether does our president use the N-word or not. That's not where racism lives. I'm not interested in that. He shows us with every single piece of his action that he's the ultimate racist, and it's built in class, caste, and racism. And so I'm not interested whether I find on page 243 if he used the N-word. That's not interesting to me. Every single act that he does on a daily basis fundamentally is shameful.
Yep, very good. So what what can all of us non-blacks do? What would be the most helpful?
Well, I think there's many, right? And depending where you are on this in your journey, financially, where you are in your journey as your trade, um, you know, first is to listen and learn, and whether you want to read about it or whether you want to ask a coworker, it's very different depending where you live and what. Then support it, and support can mean many different things. If you can't write a check, or maybe you're an IT expert, lend that coffee shop that is black owned in your neighborhood, lend them an IT solution.
Right.
So it's not always writing a check, right? It could be, but then also, like, I think about my cookbook now, right? The Rise. My next step with that is threefold. Number one, I want to create a residence program for Black chefs. Number two, I'm going to bring it to an online platform so the food of the Rise can be experienced nationwide, so people can order it nationwide. And number three, I'm going to build a fund targeted towards African American chefs and entrepreneurs, so we can really give a lot of content in this space, not just in New York or Boston or LA, so people can actually experience Black businesses. Because one of the best way to break these walls down is through either culture, right? Think about what music has done for Black culture in America, right? Think about storytelling. I remember the day when you and I went to Maya Angelou, right?
Yeah.
But then the other way you can experience is through businesses. What I've learned as a person through going to Italian American restaurants. And we can do the same through an African American lens, it would do massive for relationships in this country.
Yeah. I love it, Marcus. I think that you're wiser than your years by a couple decades, my friend. You really are. And I can't wait to. When does Rise come out?
End of October 27th.
Did you sneak in a bread recipe to play the pun all the way or not?
Yeah.
Put a little manto in there, right? Chinese steamed bread, because that definitely rises.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that you and I know, and everyone on this call also knows, and one of the things that I did see come out of this whole last 6 months is people are just cooking more at home.
Yeah.
And that's a very positive thing. Of course, we want you to still come to our restaurants one day, but just that whole act that we get to do, right? We get to share our love, our dishes. And that's the reason. If everyone always asks us, why we love being chefs. And the number one reason is you can make people happy through food, and you're showing a part of yourself through that dish, right? It's your soul. And I do think so many more people. I mean, just think about sourdough, for example, right?
Yeah.
How many people, my wife included, she has Bob. She's having a little thing with Bob right now, Bob the sourdough. But that has really happened. And I think that's been a very positive, because I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think when COVID stops, they're going to stop cooking. Because once you get the cooking bug, I mean, my wife's going to be baking with Bob for the rest of her life, right?
That's great.
And that's one of the positive things I've seen, because people, and people are asking more questions probably now. How do you cook this? How do you do that? And that part I've loved, right? I still want to get out of this. I still want to see the end of this tunnel, because, we want a sense of normalcy, right? We want you said at the beginning of this call, it's the people, it's the connection that has been broken, right? This is a great connection with you. I see you, I can feel you, but we're not in the same room. Right. And that's night and day. Right. I mean, we are all zoomed out. Right. We've zoomed more than anyone.
Absolutely.
But I can't wait. I can't wait to hug. You know me. I'm a hugger. You're a hugger. Hug someone. Right. And that's what we do in the restaurants. Right. We hug every patron that comes in. Every time. And that's been just stopped. And that to me has been the hardest part, because you don't see your friends, your regulars, your cooks, your right. That you can't replace that with a Zoom call.
But Ming, you have a very important role, because when we came up, and you were the first other person that was non-white that had your own show. And that's not a small feat. That's an amazing, that's so important, right? So I was like, if he can do it, I can do it, right? And those examples of others, and it's still, everyone running a restaurant is hard, having a TV show it's hard, but setting those levels of examples and standards are super, super, super important. So sometimes when we set up something, we're in the wilderness, like, oh, I'm doing this demo again, and like it's rough, but it's such an important thing to keep the lights on, whatever the lights on means, because it's different, right? For every person today, whether you do an Instagram show, or whether you do a TV show, or whether you have a bakery open. So for me, it's really America. It's this beautiful place where we have huge gaps and mistakes and faults, but all these neighborhoods of people are inspired by amazing people, right? So, I traveled with no passport required. My show, we did a show about Chinatown in Vegas, right?
Right.
And the amount of people that said, "You on Food Network? You know Ming?" I said, "Yeah, I know Ming." "Oh, I love his show," right? Or but I say that because I don't know if you've been to Chinatown in Vegas, but there's actually two Chinatowns, and it's very young. It was built in the 90s, and now they're building a third one. What are those businesses? 90% are restaurants. So imagine them, close your eyes and imagine them all closed. So when people are beating up on immigrants, or people are beating up on whatever the false narratives are, these are places that were closed that now provides job for thousands and thousands of people, right? And they're so busy and they're so successful, so they have to build the third Chinatown since mid-90s. I mean, if you would put that on the stock market, that would be that's amazing to me, right? So I just think
it'd be Amazon, I think.
Yeah, exactly. No, but there are examples like that, and they all watch your show. And the key thing as a star is to inspire so other people can aspire. The link between inspire and aspire is so important.
I'm so great. And that's why I said earlier, we can't give up, right? We actually have a responsibility. You have Africa and Swedish responsibilities, right? And I have China's responsibility and family responsibility. Yes. We have a wife and we have children, et cetera, et cetera. So Marcus, we have a couple of questions, and this is a good one. And I love to really hear, because you definitely would have an opinion. Cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
When the whole thing with cuisines, and why can this Caucasian cook Korean food, and what is this Japanese guy doing French food? And I mean, I have my own opinion, but I'd love to hear your opinion on first.
Well, I think, first of all chefs, regardless of what ethnicity you are, we are super curious about other cultures. I've never met a chef, regardless of where she's from, where he's from, that's not curious. Oh, you do that way? I want to learn that. So our DNA it's like asking a basketball player, can you jump? I'm like, how high? We are super curious people. But then if you're going to do something that is not of your culture, you also have to front that with saying, hey, I learned this from Auntie so-and-so, or my buddy's mom, or my buddy's father, and he is from Malaysia, or whatever the culture is from. My version is not the same because I actually don't know all the steps. So you have to really wrap it around a lot of humility, and then highlight the OG DNA. If I'm going to do a kaya toast from Singapore, for example, from Malaysia and Singapore,
right?
I didn't invent no ever would I say that I invented. I said, when I sat in Singapore and had this at a hawker stand, it was amazing. And I remember the chef that cooked it for me. Here's my version. And you know what? His version is still better. So next time you go to Singapore, please go to this hawker stand and try it out. Yeah. Now that gives me somewhat an alliance to say, I can do that.
Right.
And if you have the capability, put it on Instagram, give a link to the place. Now you allow that to be curious, but also honor where it came from. If I'm going to say, well, came up with this Indian curry and it's really good and it's called Marcus curry. I mean, come on now. Come on now.
That's great. I mean, I so concur. I remember when I had no booze, miso yaki butterfish, right?
Yeah.
It's black cod, he calls it. Revelatory. And the first thing he admitted to me is like, dude, this thing's been around for 2,000 years. So I didn't invent it. I may have had a role in popularizing this country, but I certainly didn't invent it. And just like you, when I wrote my first cookbook, my first sentence was, I had this at Nobu's in Tribeca, right? Because I did. I made it different. Did I make it better? Probably not, but I was inspired. And with East-West cuisine, which I do, and look, I also think every chef, you and Keller and Kenny, we all do fusion cuisine, right? We're all taking techniques and ingredients from all these cultures.
Yeah.
We have our protein and our veg, and we say, okay, what's the best technique and the best spice and the best vinegar that we can use to make this dish sing? I've always said, if you're going to try to blend cuisines, which is like appropriation on steroids, you have to show the respect to the individual cuisines first and learn. If you can't go to Japan, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Japan, go to your local Japanese restaurant and learn from that Japanese chef how they make sushi rice, and then learn the basics before you start using sesame oil. And I had a chef friend, we both know him well, putting sesame oil on top of tuna carpaccio like it was olive oil. You tasted sesame oil for the entire rest of the meal, right? Because you don't put 2 tablespoons of sesame oil.
Yeah.
But if you learn how us Chinese use sesame oil, it's like a tablespoon in 4 gallons of chicken stock, right? Respect the cuisine first before you have the right to blend it. Has always been my motto.
And everybody operates differently. One of the things that you do with your show is when you ask the chefs to cook, you always want an authentic dish. You want something that's very often your starting point, and then you do your take on that. But of course, you are first highlighting the OG. You know what I mean? So that's and that is the type of, as a chef with a platform or chef, because everybody has a channel, whatever that channel big is different. But you have to say, here are the people before me that did that. Acknowledgement, then go and do your take, and then be humble enough to say, thank you very much. You know what I mean?
Yep, I agree. And as noted, and I can speak for all chefs in this, and Marcus can concur, one of our favorite foods in the world after midnight, after our event, is always in Chinatown.
Yes.
We always go to Chinatown because it's open, for one, and the food is still really good at 2 a.m. at a Chinatown restaurant, right? I mean, I've yet to, you say you never met a chef that was X. I've never met a chef that doesn't like Chinese food. I mean, that would be, that chef would be ostracized.
The book that you have to do at some point is Chinatown After Dark, because I've had Chinatown meals with you in San Francisco, Boston, and in New York, and maybe Vegas as well. So that's just 4 that I've had with you. And I mean, you are always like, let's go to Chinatown. And we go and we order and stuff comes in, and it's just amazing because like that's when the fun starts,
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Awesome. Marcus, what else is something I didn't cover you like to talk about? You talked about rides, which is awesome. What else is on your project list?
Well, I want to say a couple of things. I want to say thank you for inviting me to this table. If we're gonna evolve culturally, people that come from different backgrounds needs to build allies and needs to build bridges together. And one way to do that is to break bread over a meal in a dialogue like this. We would all love to be in a room where we can walk to the tables and do it, but there will be a moment for that. But I say this is the year of the pivot, right? And have innovation will come out of this.
Yep.
Something that I think you saw a little bit of it after 2008, but I do think this innovation will come in the food space. It's too early to say what it's going to look like, but the behaviors of people have already changed. Like you said, like people are cooking 4 days a week now. People are making more inventive breads at home. So I can't wait 18, 24 months post this, because there will be something in our everyday that is really the direct derivative out of this. I don't know what it is, but I can't wait to see what innovation in our space will look like.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, lots of ghost kitchens, lots of restaurants built for to go, and maybe somewhat incredibly safe seating with amazing HVAC system, right, for clean air. And all my restaurants are blue, right? Blue Ginger, Blue Dragon. I'm thinking, should I just do blue UV light everywhere and give people sunglasses, and there'll be no COVID? Promise, no COVID. It's called the Blue Light Restaurant, and the food also gets UV too. So I'm not sure it's going to taste very good. But
what else is it?
It's safe.
There's Prince that have purple, and Ming that have blue. That's it.
Yeah. Awesome. So there's a question about our shows, Marcus. Are you taping? Do you have any plans to do more Passport?
Well,
and
it's very tough.
You can't travel, right?
I can't travel.
So it's kind of hard to do your show,
yeah,
right?
It's very difficult to do the show, and we'll see after this. I mean, for me, it was my dream show. I love doing it, and I love every week.
It's a great show, dude.
Diving into different cultures and learning. I learned a ton. So it's going to be hard to travel like that. But I'm fortunate enough. I shot a lot with Food Network, and actually right now in the middle of doing the December issue for Bon Appetit, and
nice.
Working with Conda a lot on that. So again, like, this is the year of the pivot. I know I will always work with food. I will always work with people, and hopefully less Zoom meetings and more in person.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, we'll get back to filming in some way, but it's not going to be. We just shot Chopped last week, and it was the first shoot when there was and it was so important, right? It was 100 people on set, but it were in pods. Cooks were over here, food people were over there, judges over there. And we shot outside, actually just in 2 hours north of you, in Maine. But for me, it's important to talk about it, because that means if we could actually do that and slowly get production back, then little by little stuff are coming back, right?
Yeah, no, I just signed up to do Guy Fieri's ranch show, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing. Everyone's in pods. You get tested before you fly, tested when you land, tested. Everyone gets tested every day when they're shooting, which I think is great. And for those that are interested, so Simply Ming, we took a hiatus this year. I'm going to do a show with my son Henry. One thing that I did that pivoted was we did these live Instagram PBS food shows, which was awesome with both my boys. That was so fun, and they're 5 times more popular than me already, which is that's a no-brainer, right? I mean, come on. But Henry in particular, Henry in particular is really quite fun and good and very sarcastic, and so we're gonna do probably a 13 series. It'll be on Facebook Live, and then it'll be aired on.
Great.
Yes.
And that's awesome.
Again, done by myself with a iPhone. The fact that you can make TV with iPhone, and I'm doing HSN for my kitchen live on HSN through Skype, through an iPhone. It's just right. So that's thank God there's that technology. It's keeping us sane at least. What are you eating there, by the way?
I'm eating just a little succotash and just some vegetables and a little bit of fried chicken.
Is the Gold Belly model work for you?
It does.
You're making it and packing it and shipping it. Is that right?
We make it all in our restaurant, pack it, ship it, and that's one sign of the pivot, right? Like, started the podcast this moment, signed up with Gold Belly, with Street Bird, going nationwide. So yeah, I mean, it's about really being open and figuring it out. Like you talked about Ghost Kitchen, so that's probably one of the first Ghost Kitchen that came out, and we're having a lot of success with it. Knock on wood.
So in closing, Marcus, I could talk to you for 5 more days, but this is a great question, and we'll both answer it. First dish you learned how to cook?
Oh, I know that easily for me. It was Swedish meatballs with my grandmother. So, success was rolling faster than my older sister.
You should have sold the recipe to IKEA. You'd be doing really well now. They apparently sold a billion meatballs, right?
Wow.
My God. Yeah, exactly. I know. I should have gone the white furniture business, but I did not. For me, similar, like a staple is Bing, Scallion Pancake.
Nice.
That's my grandfather makes Scallion Pancake. It's like flour and water and scallions and oil. That's it. Oh my God.
Wow.
That was right.
And did you flip it?
Still taste it.
Did you flip it?
Well, dude, I was like 3 years old, so no, I wasn't flipping at 3 years old. No, I let him do it, but I ate it. I learned, and this is probably why you're a chef too, but I always say this, I was, still am, and will always be hungry.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a chef, because I was always in the kitchen as a kid, and my yaya, nani, whoever, grandparents, parents throw me scraps. So they're carving the duck, you can get a scrap if you're in the kitchen.
Nice.
Right? If you're on your Atari, and then dating myself, if you're playing Atari on your black and white TV, you're not going to get a snap.
What was the duck dish? Tell me which duck dish you did.
My first duck dish?
No, you talked about your grandparents. Maybe they threw you some ducks. What was the duck dish?
Oh yeah. It'd be Hong Shao Ya red roast duck, which is whole duck braised in a soy sauce, rock candy, ginger, star anise, Thai bird chilies, red wine, 2.5 hour braise. You braise it, you can barely get it out with a spider. And then this whole duck kind of just melts, like literally the bones kind of fall off. You add a bunch of bok choy or watercress at the end, and it's the best family dish. And especially Chinese New Year, you always eat whole things, right?
And the skin, the skin doesn't get crispy.
The skin just melts. Yeah, okay. I mean, all the bones are still in there, and it's just this, it's this gigantic, just sweet soy, very unctuous from the ginger duck, and you just eat it with a huge pot of rice.
And is that marinated before or not?
No, you actually if you're doing it VIP, you dunk it in boiling water first just to get some of the residual and the fat off, just like you do with pork belly. Then literally 2.5 hour braise in this soy brown, the rock candy, and it's so
oh my God,
so succulent. And more importantly, the smell it created in the house, right? For 2.5 hours, it smelled like my childhood. Right, soy sauce and cinnamon, star anise.
I read somewhere that the braised duck dish was a very big dish way before the Peking dish.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, the braised duck has been around much longer, right?
Yeah, Hong Shao is probably predates it by 1,000 years. I always say this, and I'll close on this, but we always say it took a very brave man or woman to eat the first oyster, right?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because they saw an otter cracking an oyster open, and the otter eats it. Like, oh, if the otter can eat it, I guess we'll try it. Peking duck, and I don't know this because I wasn't alive when it was created, but it had to have been 5 or 8 Chinese men, because chefs back then were only male, sitting around, probably having a couple Mai Tais, and someone probably says, I want to go blow a duck up. We're like, what are you talking about, blowing a duck up? I mean, let's think about that. Who says that? I mean, I want to make more layers of pastry with my pâte feuilletée. Fine. But let's force air between the duck skin and the meat so it renders off. I mean,
brilliant.
That technique is, I don't know of a better unusual technique than Peking duck, to be honest. And I can't wait to serve to you when you can come out to my restaurant Baba out in Montana. I do a tea smoked Peking duck. It's so good. I took 2 techniques, and it's unbelievable because the smoking dries the skin out even more.
Now I can't wait. All right, buddy.
Marcus, listen, you are absolutely the best. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, guys. But listen, thank you. I think there's so much that hopefully we will always continue to do together. But in the
Yes.
big picture, Asians and Blacks, we have the same struggle.
Yeah, same
And
journey.
collectively, and I'm very proud of how C100 stepped up when Black Lives Matter, when it's been here for tens of years, lots of years, but just recently, because the struggle is real, and all of our cultures
Yes.
know it, understand it, and if we combine,
Oh no,
maybe
it's
we can take
power.
this.
I mean,
Right.
it's I don't want to go on to it, but it's just
Yeah, no, but we have this opportunity, right?
Yeah.
As all problems, all disasters, all of those have opportunities, right?
Yes.
There is, if you steer the right way, pivot the right way, you can make a difference, and
Absolutely.
and that's what you've been doing, my friend. You've been making a difference. Best to Maya, please.
Thank you.
And
Best to the family.
love you as always.
We'll see you
I
soon.
can't
Right?
wait to see you. See you
Love
in
you,
South
brother.
Beach, New York, Boston, somewhere. All
Thank
right.
you.
And for everyone, C100, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're in New York, please, 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 either go belly or go up north to Harlem. There, it's not that far. Just amazing food at Red Rooster. And Marcus, I can't wait to see you again. And we'll see you
Thank you,
soon.
brother.
Godspeed, and please stay safe. All right,
Okay.
buddy. As always, peace and good eating. Thank you all, C100.